just run on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being part of this. Yeah, Celine just said reimagine. We're going to press the restart button now, so it'd be great if everybody can take their seats and act like you're hearing this for the first time. Okay. A very good afternoon and a warm welcome to Conversations Reimagined, Urban Poverty, The Hidden Struggles. My name is Amy Cheng, and it gives me great pleasure to be your moderator for this afternoon. This event is organized by the Best of You social movement, initiated by Julie's Biscuit. And we'd like to take this opportunity to thank our co-working partner, Just Co, for generously sponsoring this venue. Just Co is currently Singapore's largest co-working space provider with more than 40 centers in the region. They have a presence in Singapore, Indonesia, Thailand, China, South Korea, Australia, Taiwan, and Japan. Visit Just Co's website and social media pages to find out more. This event, titled Conversations Reimagined, Urban Poverty, The Hidden Struggles, is really about having a meaningful exchange between you and our very special panel of speakers, all very positive, passionate social change makers who've made such wonderful contributions to our community. So we're really happy to have them here. And this event, excuse me, this event is divided into two parts. We'll have discussion 1 and discussion 2. And at the end of each discussion, we'll open up the floor to take questions from our live audiences as well as our online viewers. So online viewers, if you have any questions, please do post them on our Facebook. Right now, it gives me great pleasure to invite the founder of the Best of You social movement, Mr. Sai Se Hong. Please give him a hand.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, for a second time. Yeah, technical difficulties. Yes, I know. For those of you tuning in from live stream, I'm really sorry about that, but this will be very memorable. So let's get started. Yes. We founded the Best of You in 2014, and this is our 8th year. Our goals are humble and simple. The Best of You is an appreciative storytelling movement. Appreciation helps us to take stock of our lives and community, and sometimes the things that we've neglected. Storytelling, because inviting people to share their life stories and attending closely to those stories make us a better community, more empathetic to each other's situation. The Best of You wants to change things for the better, but we know that change doesn't happen overnight. It happens mostly incrementally with small actions and perhaps one crucial conversation at a time. We are here today for this exact purpose, to have a conversation that I hope would help us reimagine our present challenges and biases to forge a better future. Today's conversation is about urban poverty. The conversation began almost 10 years ago in Canada, where I worked as an educational psychologist. My primary job was to help students who were in academic difficulty. And over many conversations with these students, I've learned that many of them didn't struggle with their studies because they were unintelligent, lazy, or didn't work hard enough. In fact, many of these students were probably the hardest working people I've met. But they came from lower income backgrounds, juggling a full-time or part-time job while pursuing their studies. Many of them saw their degrees as a ticket to a better life, but always felt like it was an uphill climb. So imagine this, 25 hours a week for full-time work, at least 9 hours of classes a week, and each hour of class, let's say 3 hours of study time. That adds up to around 60 hours in school and at work. This doesn't include your commute time, meal prep, exercise, grocery shopping, let alone social or downtime. Note that tuition fees have also increased threefold over the past few decades. With this minimum cost load, it would take them around 6 to 7 years to complete their degrees. Now, back when universities formalized their curriculum, full-time study and work was not part of the equation. So from this angle, it could be argued that universities are quite unfriendly to lower-income students. Time was just one dimension that many of these students felt squeezed. Many of them also frequented food banks because they were food insecure. Inspired by my experience in Canada, we developed an interactive storybook called The Impossible Timetable of Ron. It's an online storybook that allows users to help Ron make key decisions in the course of his busy day. As 11-year young Ron goes through his day, in the story, time is his primary tension point. He has very little time to complete all his responsibilities. His parents work round the clock. And he's also acutely aware that he's squeezed for resources and opportunity. He doesn't get enough time for study, he doesn't have tuition teachers, and he probably doesn't get enough sleep. He suppresses his hunger and also wonders whether his next meal will be there. And we'll dive a little bit into this topic about food insecurity later in this segment. Many children living in poverty are probably not as resourceful as Ron, but there is a Ron out there, so this keeps us hopeful. But resilience can only get us this far, right? The community needs to change, the system needs to change. Now, the story of Ron was created to develop empathy amongst young children. Empathy is a skill. We get better at it when we listen to more stories and have more opportunity to walk in the shoes of other people. And this has always been one of our goals at The Best of You. We think that the more we experience other people's lives, we build empathy one story at a time, one conversation at a time. I'm very proud to have our esteemed speakers to kick off our third iteration of Conversations Reimagined, to help us change things for the better, one conversation at a time. At this juncture, I'll leave you to our amazing moderator, Amy, as she introduces our speakers for today. Over to you, Amy.
Thank you very much, Zihong, for that very inspiring opening speech. Before we do that, let's direct our attention to the screen as we play a short clip on food security. What does it mean? Does it mean getting the right nutrients one needs for a healthy diet? Or do you think that food security should only be about keeping our stomachs full? And on that note, we'll now like to invite our key speakers for the first part of the conversation, Dr. Dalvin Sidhu and Dr. Tanya Nagpal, to shed light on one prominent symptom of urban poverty, food insecurity. Dr. Dalvin Sidhu is a senior program manager at the Lien Center for Social Innovation. Her research interests focus on advocacy for vulnerable groups in Singapore. Dr. Tanya Nagpal is a senior lecturer at the S.R. Nathan School of Human Development, Singapore University of Social Sciences. Both of them have been working on an important research project commissioned by the Food Bank Singapore in collaboration with Lien Centre of Social Innovation, the Hunger Report. Part 1 is an in-depth look at food insecurity in Singapore, which was launched in 2020. This report provides a detailed account of the first nationally representative study on the largely hidden problem of food insecurity in Singapore. And I thought that the name of the report that preceded this one, Hunger in a Food Lover's Paradise, was rather interesting. And just last month, Part 2, the Hunger Report, targeting specific needs in the wake of COVID-19, was just published. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Dalvin and Tanya.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you for having us, Amy.
We'll go straight into the questions. So the first question is, how would you define food insecurity?
So food insecurity is a state of which a household does not have or is not confident of having economic and physical access to sufficient, acceptable food for a healthy life.
And how did the research come about? And could you also share the key conclusions from Hunger Report 1 and 2?
Sure. So it's impossible to talk about Hunger Report 2 without discussing and introducing Hunger Report 1. So in 2019, LCSI, the Lien Centre for Social Innovation, was commissioned by the Food Bank to conduct a nationally representative study to really look at the prevalence of food insecurity in the local context. And we wanted to do this because there was no national statistic on what is the proportion of our population that suffers from food insecurity. So we published Hunger Report 1 in 2020, right in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. So what were two key takeaways from the Hunger Report 1? The first is that 10.4% of Singaporean households that we surveyed, and we surveyed over 1,200 of them, were actually suffering or experiencing some form of food insecurity in the past 12 months at the time of which when they did the survey. The second key takeaway was that we found that there were misalignment in the food support that was given to food insecure households, and this is because of mobility issues, cultural mismatches, dietary restrictions, and these households were having challenges with converting the food support that was given to them into consumable meals. So what happened in 2019 when we finished the data collection for Hunger Report 1 was when COVID struck. So the world came to a standstill, and then there were lockdowns, snap lockdowns. In Singapore, there was the circuit breaker, and the threat of more circuit breakers became very possible. So in 2022, the Food Bank and Lien Centre, we realized that what we wanted to do is to go back to our previously identified food insecure households. And we had identified over 149 of them, because we had looked at 1,200 participants, right? So we went back and we wanted to see how has COVID-19 impacted our previously identified food insecure households. So we had two key objectives for the Hunger Report 2. And the two key objectives really was built on the key takeaways from Hunger Report 1. So the first thing we wanted to do, really find out what is the impact of COVID-19 on the vulnerable group that we had identified, our food insecure households. The second thing that we wanted to do really was to put into action recommendation that we ourselves had put forward in our report to meet the unique needs of each food insecure households. So through an intervention, we do attempt to try and see if we would be successful in meeting the unique needs of food insecure households. So what did we find in the Hunger Report 2? What were some of our key findings, right? So in terms of what is the impact of COVID-19 on food insecurity, we have some good news. Then the good news is that 44% of our previously identified food insecure households have registered some form of improvement in their food security status. So when we talk about some form of improvement, basically what we mean is that there is a movement up by at least one category. So it's a movement from severely food insecure to moderately food insecure, because that's an improvement. An improvement from moderately food insecure to now food insecure, to now food secure, sorry. And then we have households who moved two categories, from severely food insecure to now food secure. And the other piece of good news came when we looked specifically into the three categories of food security statuses. And we found that 20.3% of our previously identified food insecure households are now food secure. So basically what this means is that pre-COVID in 2019, they were registered as food insecure. But now in 2021, they're now food secure with the same survey tool, right? So we were very, very intrigued as to why that might be, and you will find some of the reasons as to why they were able to move up the food security status in our full report. But I think what I want to focus here really is the bad news, which is 10.2% of our previously identified food insecure households worsening in their food security status. So basically, this means that they went from being moderately food insecure pre-COVID to now severely food insecure. Okay, and we also have 45.8% of our households who registered no change. So they are still struggling. So in terms of food support, what did we find? The vast majority of our food insecure households are still not receiving any form of food support. This is despite a small increase in the number that is receiving food support. So in 2019, we had 25.5% receiving food support. In 2021, we had 28.8%. But I think the point we really want to emphasize here is that 71%, the vast majority of them, are not receiving any form of food support. So my colleague Tanya will be going through with you the intervention that we put forward in order to try and meet the unique needs of our food insecure households and whether we were successful.
Thank you, Dalvin. So what we did in the second part of the study was really to meet the unique needs. We obviously need to find out what the unique needs of each family were. So what we did was that we actually designed what we called the needs toolkit. This needs toolkit is actually appended in the actual report. So I'd encourage you guys to go and see what are the kind of questions we asked them. It was about 5 to 7 minutes of telephone interview with the family, where we asked them about their food preferences, their dietary restrictions, whether there were children in the household, what kind of, how much money do they spend on food on a monthly basis, and also what was their preferred mode of food support. That was the most critical question that we asked. And based on the responses to this needs toolkit, we decided to give them 2 months worth of support, either in the form of NTUC vouchers or in the form of cooked meals, based on what the families had told us about what their preferences were. So what we wanted to do was really to give them the autonomy, give them the choice and the volition to decide what's best for them. So that's what we did. Now, of course, we wanted to know what was the impact of this sort of a food support on these families. And we were very encouraged to know that 23.5% of these households who had been registered as food insecure at pre-intervention were now food secure at post-intervention. So that was very, very encouraging for us. And not only this, we actually saw the salutary effects of this intervention extend to their levels of satisfaction with the food support. So earlier in 2019, 88% of our participants had reported feeling dissatisfied with the food support that was being rendered to them. But this time round, 75.8% were extremely satisfied, and the remaining 24.2% were also somewhat satisfied. So that was very encouraging for us. And apart from that, we also found that their psychological well-being over this 2-month period had also improved, because we believe that food is not only something that nourishes our physical body, but it also nourishes our social longings and our emotional well-being. And we wanted to see its impact on that. And we found very encouragingly, again, that their psychological well-being had also improved. So this was really the crux or the gist of the report. Of course, the details are available in the actual report. I'd encourage you guys to go and see it. In your goodie bag, you see a pamphlet, which is a summarized version of the report. So please go have a look. And of course, we're open to questions if there are any.
Tanya, could you also share what are the possible reasons leading to their food insecure situation?
Well, intuitively, yes, there are monetary reasons. So, for example, they have rental payments or mortgages, or there's been job loss in the family. But there were non-monetary reasons also cited by our participants. What were these non-monetary reasons? Things like incarceration, spouse bereavement, or simply lack of time to cook was also one of the reasons that many families actually experience food insecurity. So yeah, it is actually a combination of various factors.
Delvin, who are most likely to fall into this group of food insecurity?
So from Hunger Report 2, what we found was that more than half of them, 52.5% of them are residing in 1 to 2 bedroom HDB flats. But when you look at this number, it also tells you that the other half of them are not. So that means that food insecurity actually exists in the wide variety of household types, those living in 3-bedroom households, those living in 4 or 5. We even had food insecurity popping up in those living in condominiums as well as landed houses. We also found that more than half of them, 60.8% of them, are actually earning a household income of less than $2,000.
Using the interactive story simulation that Zihong was referring to at the opening, Impossible Timetable of Ron, we see Ron as an 11-year-old boy going through hunger whilst he is in school, having to give up his breakfast. What are some of the challenges faced by people in similar situations?
I think when you see Ron and his life, right, the challenges are multifaceted. He's a child himself, but he takes on adult responsibilities in his household. He does have caregiving responsibilities of his younger sibling. He has household chores, and he's balancing that with his own aspirations, his own dreams, and his schoolwork. Right? We also see that there are multiple bills that needs to be paid in the household, and there needs to be prioritization of which bills get paid first. So there is limited resources, and the effect of that is that there are deficits in areas such as food. So you see Ron not having adequate food, right, breakfast, because he needs to sacrifice that for his younger sibling, or deficits in his uniform. Right, he compares his brown and yellow uniform and shoes to that of his classmates. We also see him fear getting sick, right? Because getting sick means possibly a large health bill, right? So he's downing bottles of water just to make sure that, just to try and get rid of his fever, because he doesn't want to burden his parents of having to go to the doctor. So really the challenges are multifaceted.
And that's a lot for an 11-year-old boy to handle. Tanya, what is an ideal state of food security? I like to say Singapore, right?
Well, Singapore's not doing bad on that account, actually, because at the very least, there should be enough food available. So the answer to that question in terms of Singapore is yes, there is enough food to go around. We've actually ranked number 1 on the Global Food Security Index. So from a supply perspective, there is enough. But there is also a second layer to it. Yes, there is enough supply of food, but is there enough access to food? So economic access, is the food reasonably priced? Can I afford it? And also, is the food physically accessible? Is it in my household's vicinity for me to be able to get healthy food, a healthy meal? So that's access. And then is the aspect of utilization. You know, sometimes you have available and you have access to the food, but you're not able to convert it into meals. It's something that Dalvin also mentioned earlier, because you do not have the resources to either select, prepare, or even store the food that you have obtained in an effective manner. And
They may
last
not
but
have like kitchen facilities and all that.
yeah, I mean, lack of cooking facilities or utensils even for that matter. And then last but not the least is the whole idea of stability, right? You do not want food security to be something that's transient or something that's uncertain. You want to be confident. You want to be sure that you will be getting food no matter what your financial standing in society. So that is the ideal situation of food security. Of course, we may not be able to tick all the boxes, but we should try to tick some of them at least confidently.
Do you think there is a mindset that some people deserve to enjoy this food security? For example, like in Hunger Report 1, and when you look at Hunger Report 2, you develop this needs toolkit to check if they were happy with their food. And I can already hear some people are probably thinking in their head, what do you mean? The fact that we're giving them food, they should be very grateful. So maybe you can share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think that is something that we've experienced over the 3 times that we've conducted this study, that, when people feel embarrassed to seek food support because there is this expectation that they should be very grateful that they're getting food support, but it shouldn't have to be like that. Number one, also because of the fact that many privileged sections of society fail to recognize their own privilege, right? And it's very obvious to those who don't have that privilege. So, and it also then perpetuates this assumption of meritocracy. So we feel that people who are hardworking, people who are talented, people who are capable are the ones who can lead a good life or an economically secure life. And if you're not economically secure, it's because of the choices you made or it's because of the decisions you made. But I think what we found in our report was the fact that we had the unique opportunity of actually looking at the spending trends of the families who were given these vouchers, and we found that they actually spent the money on the same food items that an average Singaporean would do. We compared their spending with the spending of an average Singaporean according to the Household Expenditure Survey, and it was very obvious to us that they made responsible choices that were good for their families. So this idea of deservedness or the fact that this bias that we have in many privileged sections of society needs to break in order for us to make any progress.
Mm-hmm. I think this brings me back to Hunger Report 1, because we asked our participants, all 1,200 of them, 2 questions, right? Especially for those who were classified as food insecure. Do you seek for food support? Vast majority of them say no. And we asked them the reason why they're not seeking for food support. It's embarrassment, but it's also a sense and a feeling that other people might be struggling more than themselves. So they should save the food support for others because they should try and figure themselves out. It's not too bad. So there is that sense of, I guess, camaraderie, between the families or households who are suffering from food insecurity, because they do believe that they don't deserve it.
And before I move on to the next question, this is my own personal question that I want to ask. Moving forward from the Hunger Report 2, with this needs toolkit, do you think there'll be any challenges in implementing it? Do you think people will take up the idea of maybe we should ask them what they prefer, what is more convenient for them, etc., etc.?
So for us, I think when we created the needs toolkit, we wanted to ensure that it's easily usable and can be administered very efficiently. So the biggest barrier, I would say, to using this needs toolkit would be your mindset. The mindset that food insecure families actually deserve dignity and a sense of ownership to decide what kind of food they buy for their households. So our needs toolkit is actually very easy to use because we have done it ourselves. It can be done via the phone. You can upload that into a survey and administer that to your beneficiaries. It's easy to use, but you need to be able to break the mindset.
Yeah, just fight that inertia, and that we can give a voice and we can give them a chance to articulate what is important to them and what is actually the main, what is desired by that family in terms of food.
You can see that we were able to do 2 things with our intervention. We were able to meet their food needs, which was the number one thing, but we did that through giving them autonomy and dignity as well. So that, and Tanya presented the impact of doing that in terms of their psychological well-being, in terms of their improvement in food security status as well.
I think this will probably lead to the next question. What do you think are the practical steps in order to achieve this ideal state of food security? Would you say changing mindsets will be the main focus?
I think it has to start from there. It really, really has to start from there because, in my opinion, I think that's the biggest barrier. Like what Dalvin also said, once the brain is switched, we turn on the other switch by saying that and by feeling that individuals are disadvantaged in certain ways, and there are, what can I do to support this, or what can I do to contribute? And ask yourself that question. Don't think that government can do it, voluntary organizations will do it, food support organizations will do it. They'll do their work, but what can I do? So I think for me, the biggest practical step is to really ask that question to yourself. What can you do to contribute?
What can I do, and what would I value if I was at the receiving end? So some form of empathy as well. If I was in that situation, would I value autonomy? Would I value dignity? Would I value someone giving me a sense of ownership over my own life?
Thank you so much for all these valuable insights. I'm sure our audience learned a lot. We'll now like to open the floor to our live audiences. We'll take 2 questions, and then we'll take 2 questions from our online viewers. Anybody has any questions? Please use this opportunity and ask away. If anybody has a question, yeah, okay. I think one member of the audience there.
Hi. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
So great talk, great panel so far, really learning a lot. I had a question about the hunger report part 2. Was any effort made to track the other new additions to the food insecure classified families? Because 45% sort of went out, but did we take into account any that went in?
So we did not. So the limitation, I guess, of this study is that we focused on food insecure households. So households that has been already identified as food insecure households. What we would have liked to do is to also have looked at previously identified food secure households, right? And see if COVID had impacted them, and then they would have joined the food insecure group. So this is something that we had not done, because I think personally, the both of us as well, we anticipated COVID-19 to have exacerbated the food insecure experience and statuses of vulnerable families. So that was the focus of Hunger Report 2. But I think it's a very valid point that there is value in also looking at previously food secure households to see if any of them have now joined the food insecure category, and I'm pretty sure that there will be.
Okay, thank you.
We can take one more question from the live audience. Just put up your hands and we'll happily bring a mic to you. Does anyone have a question? If not, I'll jump in with mine. Going once, going twice? Okay. This is something that, I was interested in, because in Hunger Report 1, it was mentioned that one of the recommendations was for assessment tools to be recalibrated. I mean, the way they defined households that needed food insecurity, and I think along those lines. Mm-hmm. So maybe you can share more on that. Has it been recalibrated, or do you think it still needs to be recalibrated? And what are they, for the sake of the audience members here who need to know what those assessment tools are?
Well, from the research perspective, it's very important for us to use standardized instruments. So what we used in both our reports was the household what's the HFSSM? The
Household
acronym
Food
is
Survey
the
Module.
Household Food Security Survey Schedule, which has been used in Canada and the United States for their food insecurity surveys, right? So we wanted to use instruments that have been used widely across in other countries so that our estimates and our statistics are comparable, number one. So that helps. And also it helps us because this instrument is specifically designed to capture whether this whether this family has been struggling with having their food needs met over the last 12 months. It's very collaborated, and it yields a very accurate estimate of whether this family is, and also because it has different tiers, right? So you would come up with a moderately food insecure tier and a severely food insecure tier, which helps you to then give the support in a very targeted manner. Versus doing it in a very organic manner and just going and asking the family, do you have any food support needs or requirements, from that perspective.
Okay, thank you so much for your answer. And now we'll take the online questions. So the first question is, besides food insecurity, what are the other forms of urban poverty which are emerging or exist to which we need to start paying greater attention? I think this can probably be answered in the second discussion. But, if you'd like to touch on it too, just like in 2 sentences or so.
Well, I see food insecurity as a very visible manifestation of urban poverty. Of course, economic insecurity or urban poverty will impact not only... the visible part is that, of course, you don't have enough food to eat, so obviously it would lead to some physical and nutritional deficits. But it also leads to a lot of, in my opinion, urban poverty also leads to a lot of mental deficits, cognitive deficits. It has been found that individuals who have economic insecurity struggle with information overload or cognitive overload at various junctures in their lives, and on a daily basis they have to be doing this cost-benefit analysis, so that puts a lot of pressure on them mentally. So the integrative complexity is also in that sense compromised. So definitely there are so many different manifestations of it. Food insecurity, in my opinion, being the most visible one. We have to eat 2 to 3 times a day, so it's very much in your face, from that perspective.
Thanks for that. And the second question, an online question, do you think food insecurity can be entirely resolved?
That is a good goal to achieve too, but I think that there are many steps to be, and challenges to be overcome before we can reach that goal.
Would you like to share a little bit about those challenges in 2 or 3 sentences?
I mean, for me, I would say that it's about really meeting the unique needs of each food insecure households, making them feel confident of being able to put sufficient, acceptable, and healthy food on their table, food that they decide, so that they're confident of, having food security, not just for the next few months, but for the long hold.
Yeah, I think in terms of resolution to these very things like poverty, food insecurity, these are very wicked problems. Like, no one person can handle this, right? So it requires, we all need to come together, government, corporates, average citizens like you and I need to come together and really seek out opportunities where we can make a difference, where we can contribute. It's so encouraging for me to see this young person sitting here in the audience today. Like, I think that's the very nice and very fresh. I think we're moving in the right direction. When young people are coming and listening to talks like this, I think we need to give you a clap, an applause for being here today.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for your questions. If we haven't managed to answer any of your questions, the answer will be posted on our Facebook discussion tab, so not to worry. But once again, thank you, ladies, for coming here and giving us so much of your valuable insights. Next, we'll move on to part 2 of our discussion. As you know, food insecurity is just one of the symptoms of urban poverty. So next up, we have lined up speakers with great experience in the social work sector to broaden our perspectives on the various aspects of urban poverty. I'd like to invite them to take their seats here with me so I'm not so lonely up here. Kek Xiao Ling, Director of Resource and Strategy, Lutheran Community Care Services. Ng Bi Ling, Director of Community Development and Corporate Support, AMK FSC Community Services. Pauline Tan, Head of Program, HCSA Dayspring SPIN, which stands for Single Parents Informed, Involved, Included. And Yong Teck Ming, National Director, Habitat for Humanity Singapore. Thank you so much for joining us today. And so the very first question is, urban poverty is such a big and vague term. Could you help us unpack what this term is all about in the Singapore setting, of course?
Okay, I think that's an interesting concept because Singapore has no poverty line. So in our interpretation of urban poverty, it's based on our experience journeying and working alongside with families who are facing financial challenges. So one of the idea about urban poverty is a lack or limited opportunities or assets such as finance and network to thrive. And what does thriving means? Thriving means having availability of choice. You're able to make choices to flourish both materially and emotionally. I think for one example that we have this father, he's very resilient and he took the initiative to upgrade himself. Yeah, he upgraded himself and got a position of cleaning supervisor. However, at the same time, he has some health problem, and the doctor said, you need to go for rehabilitation. And what he did was that, I can't. You know, I'm the sole breadwinner. If I go for rehab, you know, it's a time taken away from work, and he's concerned that what is his employer going to see him? Why is he being perceived like irresponsible? You know, you're not a committed worker and dedicated worker. So he has this dilemma here. And another one is like a single mom who has a lot of experience in the accounting, you know. However, she cannot do any job advancement. It's because people have been asking, do you have a cert in accountancy and things like that. So what we did was to find a sponsor to sponsor her diploma course in accountancy. Another, story I can share is children, right? So we have children, and the parents have bandwidth in teaching them. I think even ourselves have difficulty teaching the children because I think the subjects are really very difficult. And she had issue with math. So we made arrangement with a private tuition center because we believe that all children should have equal access to opportunities. So they gave us a subsidized rate, and we told the family, you pay whatever you can afford. Yeah, and we found an individual donor to subsidize the rest of the fee. And she found herself doing better in her math subject. So I think urban poverty to us is really, really the lack of access to opportunities to succeed in life. Yeah.
And I mean, when you say that, it reminds me of the story again, Impossible Timetable of Ron. You know, when we see him, when he has to give up his breakfast for his sister, when he's very aware that what he's wearing is less than what his surrounding classmates have, and his ability to perform it just affects him. So maybe, Pauline, if I can get you to share a little bit about the daily lived experiences of people who are actually, going through urban poverty.
Sure. Yep. So can you hear me? So what May had shared was more from perspective. On the timetable, Impossible Timetable of Ron is from the perspective of a child, but I would like to share examples from the perspective of a parent, a single parent. And before I shared that, I really just want to bring to the point where Xiaoling mentioned about urban poverty. It's really about beyond deficiency of income or consumption, but really the lack of access to any aspect of life, right? To have a dignified quality of life. To single parents, I think a lot of the challenges that they face are really twofold. One is they do experience a lower quality of life in general, whether it's a lack of time, lack of sleep, lack of work capacity, lack of recreation. And another big one is perceived discrimination. So I'll bring you to an example of a single mother that we work with in Spain. a young mother in her 20s, let's call her Madam Anne, okay? She has 2 children, young boys in preschool, and both of them have special needs. One of them has got some form of a medical condition, and all 3 of them live in a rental flat, all right? And if you have been to any of the public rental flat, you probably will understand, and you can imagine and picture the kind of environment that they live in. You probably, if you have a choice, you probably wouldn't want to live in there. And because of that access, that limited access to the proper housing, one of the child often will have a skin allergy, flaring up. And for her, as a single parent, she's already struggling. Struggling with taking care of her children and putting food on the table. And housekeeping usually will come to the last thing. But that's very much needed because of her children's condition. So what I want to say is that for even Madam Anne's condition, living in urban poverty, where it could be quite invisible, to us, if you're just walking on the street, you probably won't tell. But you look at different aspects in terms of access to social and recreational support. She's very lack because she doesn't have an immediate family system to support her. All right, she's a single unwed mother, no family support, estranged from her family origin. All right, and of course we talk about housing, as I mentioned, how conducive is the environment in bringing up her children. We talk about discriminations. She's one that's been struggling to find stable employment. Found one employment, but couldn't last because most of the time she has to take no pay leave, childcare leave, children fall sick, and no one else is there to buffer, to help, to support. So she has to often take leave. And that kind of discrimination stems from employers, right? I can't understand. I mean, everyone else is doing their job, but why are you taking leave all the time? So it's not sustainable. And where she has to look for, and options or choices of employment is also very limited. I can only go for this type of job, in certain specific industry, low entry, but yet long hours, weird hours, low pay. So, and when, for her case particularly, I want to share is that as much as she desires to upgrade herself for a better future so that she can get a better job, she finds difficulties, she finds the challenges in even where she attempted to sign up for a WSQ course to upgrade herself. She found out, it requires me to attend a 9 to 5 full-day course for the next 3 weeks. And how can I find the time? Who's going to help me take care of my 2 children? All right. So this is the reality of one case, which is of course very unique by itself, because I think every family, like what Xiao Ling said, every family is unique. They have their needs, but this is how urban poverty could look like in Singapore. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And Teck Ming, could you kindly share with us also some of the experiences of those who are living under urban poverty?
Yeah, I think that we have to clarify, first of all, about the Singaporean situation is actually quite unique. If you were to Google words like urban poverty, you will find that for the rest of the world, urban poverty's goal is to eliminate slums. So there are many slogans out there, cities without slum. But this is a country that has no slum. Singapore is the only city in this entire planet that has no slum. I don't know whether you know this or not. So for us, the urban poverty situation is very complex. It has less to do with not having a proper home, but more to do with everything that the 2 ladies have shared already can make your head spin, right? There's so many issues involved. For example, this single mother has to do with dysfunctionality in the family, being chased out of your house. It has to do with value systems. So in Singapore, when we work the ground, we are faced with many, many different kinds of issues. Earlier, the 2 ladies that shared with us on the food security made a statement that every household is different in terms of food security or the food need. It is the same for all the issues that we are dealing with. Every single household have a different issues. And one of the key things that is very clear is that there is no one-size-fits-all solution. And so therefore, for Habitat for Humanity, our advocacy is always about the community coming together to try to help and to show concern and care. And so volunteer mobilization is one of the key things that we do. So if you want to really look at urban poverty and tackle it, you need a community of people who care for each other. because there's like 1,001 permutation of problems on the ground, and you cannot just have one solution for them all.
I remember from our previous discussion, you mentioned this elderly woman with bed bugs all over her bed. And she was just resigned to that perception. So maybe you could share with us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So Habitat for Humanity is focused mainly on shelter-related issue. We believe that every person needs to have a decent place to call home. And to break the poverty cycle, if your child does not grow up in a house, or like Ron, simple, he has to take care of his household and the cockroaches crawling everywhere. He's not going to be able to focus on his studies and whatnot. So we will bring in the volunteers to make sure that the elderly, or whoever it is, have a decent place to call home. And so bed bug elimination is one big thing that we do, because a lot of the elderly folks who live in one-room flats, and they are weak and sickly, and they really can't keep up with the place. So the other one is cockroaches and lizards and what have you. So all of you who are here, please volunteer and you come look at it. Yeah. And in Singapore, when you hear men scream, it's always cockroaches. So yeah, God help us with our national service right here. Just release the cockroach and we will surrender. So
My husband just raised his hand. He totally agrees with that.
So we just want to make sure that the volunteers and the community will come together and help whoever it is in their household to clean up and to make sure that they feel cared for as well and loved by the community.
And you mentioned how this could also disrupt the neighbors, how they relate to each other, because the bed bug somehow goes to the neighbor's place, and then it creates a lot of conflict. And
right.
Yeah.
So all the dysfunctionality also includes your neighbors as well. In the earliest days when we first started doing this work, I remember visiting one house in Bukit Merah, and the neighbor quickly came to look for me, and he said, "You come over, I want to show you something." I went to his house, he showed me a ketchup bottle filled with bed bugs. And he said the bed bugs came from this guy next door. Can you please get rid of him? So one of our goals is to make sure that the neighbors would at least accept each other. So you look at this picture, this is, for example, a hoarder house, You can imagine living beside this person, and you get really impatient and frustrated because, cockroaches may come to your house and what have you. So one of the work that we are trying to do is also to talk to the neighbors on both sides, to help them understand why this person has this problem. Sometimes there's very complicated background issue. One of the hoarder lady we know sadly had a husband that left her, and then she witnessed her own son dying in a car accident. And so that created very severe trauma for her, and so she became a hoarder. But we think that the neighbors did not know about things like that. So we want to be able to try to alleviate the situation by making everybody feel more neighborly. So exactly as the goal that earlier Si Hong was saying, right? When you tell stories and you understand each other's background better, prayerfully it will be something that will bring more empathy to each other.
I think it's really, for want of a better word, interesting that, how this stigmatization, for example, in viewing unwed moms, single parents, and people who live in such conditions with bed bugs and everything, they're kind of resigned to their lives because they realize how people see them, and eventually that's how they see themselves too. So this whole idea of how our perceptions are shaped by stereotypes, and sometimes we are not even aware, so we just react to what we see without trying to understand their situation. So this question is really directed to you, Bi Ling. I just want to find out, what are the stereotypes that we actually have that we need to address and debunk?
2 years ago, I had the privilege of co-organizing an event for the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty with people with lived experiences of poverty, and I learned a lot from them. I learned that in Singapore as a society, we hold narratives and stereotypes that are really unhelpful. Some of the narratives that they say and stereotypes that are unhelpful are, for example, if you're poor in Singapore, you must be lazy, or maybe not so intelligent, right? Or you make very bad choices. But our experiences as social workers working with these families for many years, and many of the workers here can also attest to that, is that many of the families we work with are also really working very hard. Many of them keep 3, 4 jobs, in order to bring food, put food on the table, but still caught in poverty. So is it really true that if you're poor, you are lazy? So my experience tells me that it's more complex than that. Yeah. The next myth or stereotype is that if you have tattoo, you're bad. You probably take drugs and you make bad choices and all that kind of thing. And that's why you're in poverty. That's why you can't keep down a job. This is another stereotype. Yeah, we also make stereotypes about ethnicity, but let's not go there. But these are the stereotypes we have. Yeah, we also believe that poverty only happens to the people who refuse to, sort of delay the gratification. And it will only happen to people who live in 1- and 2-room rental flats. But your food security studies shows that it does happen to people living in 4-room, 5-room flats as well. Yeah, what we, for lack of a better term, the new poor. And these are the people who, like you and me, could be jolly well very self-sufficient today, but found ourselves, in very bad situation because of failed businesses, or chronic illnesses that really sap all our savings, yeah, or simply national crisis or international crisis like COVID, right? And so poverty can happen to people we know around us. It is not a foreign issue happening to other people. It is something very close to our home. It can happen to people we know. Just the other day in Straits Time, 150,000 households are having arrears in water bill. Another 13,000 household arrears in electricity. This is not a problem that happens to only that few, unfortunate few. Yeah. Another myth that some of them tell me that is really not helpful is to keep sending them for financial literacy program. They always get this subtext message that you're not budgeting properly, you're not spending within means, that's why you're being poor. A lot of them will ask me and said that, look, where do we get the money to budget in the first place? We are in low-wage jobs. We are in jobs, gig economy, jobs that doesn't pay us well, jobs that doesn't provide job security, and they have poor social security to fall back on because a lot of these jobs has no CPF. So a lot of them ask me these very fundamental questions, well-meaning you are, in helping us, but budgeting is not something that we need. What we need is decent living wage.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. The next question, when Ron says he didn't do well in his maths because of all the other responsibilities, on top of which he's also not being able to nourish himself properly to function better. So he doesn't do well in his maths, and he comes up to his maths teacher, Mr. To, and says, in his mind, I hope he understands I was really trying my best. And that made me think, we're talking about stereotypes. I'm thinking also about my own mindset. If I'm a teacher and I see this student who's constantly doing badly, no matter what I say, what is the mindset that I should change? How should our society evolve in terms of how we see people who perhaps are not doing as well as we think we are?
I think
This is open to all four of you.
I think, first of all, it's important to be relational. And what do I mean by being relational? I think being relational is taking a step back, to have curiosity, to try to understand what that person is going through. Because when a person feels connected with you, feels that, hey, you're trying to understand, they will confide in you. For example, our children in school, they do have some teachers whom they are closer with, and they will want to tell them their stories. But there are also children who just don't want to say anything because they don't feel that people will understand or people will believe them. Yeah, and sometimes, the way adults say about them is also pretty unhelpful, right? So I think in our journey of with our families, I think the family members do appreciate the human touch that our social workers gave to them, and they like the fact that they regularly checked in to find out how they are. It makes them feel cared for, like what it means they've been cared for, valued. And what they said was that we were being proactive rather than responsive. Say that you must have a problem, then we will try to solve your problem. But we are here trying to get to know you. So I think this is being relational and building relationships to connect is very important and the first step to engage and to work with people who are having financial challenges.
Yeah, we were looking at the impossible timetable of the Ron. Of course, it's an animation, and Ron is I don't know whether he's a real kid or not, but it's a representative kid, right? So I think that's one of the worries that we have when we look at the overall scenario. On a broader perspective, if Ron as a child, no matter how smart he is, if he has to go and help his father at a hawker store every day to wash dishes and what have you, then he's not going to be able to do well, you know. And so on a macro perspective, what are we as a society what will we do for Rons in our society? And some of the things are not within our control, but I think that the powers to be has to seriously think about it. For example, in the area of scholarships, right? Is it fair to let somebody whose family is very well-to-do get the best scholarships just based on the exam result alone? Because the guy got tuition from morning to night because they can afford it. And then, of course, the fellow will outdo Ron. And so I think this should be looked at from the higher authorities. So any minister watching this, please go and do something about this. So that's the bigger perspective. At the same time, no matter what we do from the overall arcing kind of strategy, the fact remains that we do need a society that care for a Ron. That when you are the teacher, the fellow come to you, you better not think that you stupid boy, you are pulling down my curve and then affecting my assessment and what have you, which unhappily does happen. So when we move forward as a society, perhaps we will go to a stage where we care, where we relate to our children better.
And very quickly, I'll just bring that to the other question because and sorry, getting so involved and engaged in this. It's really about, this leads to the next question again, please jump in. How can community, corporate governments, individuals, social agencies all come together to start taking small achievable steps in eradicating poverty? So maybe Beeling and Beeling and Pauline, you can share about that.
I think at the macro level, the question we need to ask, first and foremost, is whether the goal is to make poverty bearable or is to make it escapable, especially across generations. Yeah. So if the end goal, like we say, is poverty eradication, that means people like Ron can get out of poverty and then, be able to provide better for her children, his children, so that, this poverty cycle is not repeated. So that's the very first question we any one of us who care, whether be it corporates or individuals, should ask. Maybe the other thing is also to unpack what kind of narratives that we hold. I think Singapore is a place where, like you said, there's really great social safety net, but yet we know of people who fall through the cracks. So what caused this? And so it got me a bit baffled that despite all this good effort, hard work from the government, from the people, and also for the families who are experiencing poverty, why do poverty get reproduced across generation? So I'm thinking that some of the policies that we need to unpack surrounds around this belief that we hold very strongly about self-reliance. And that the family should be the first line. And don't go for government help until you're down or out. Or don't go because you're not the worst. Other people are worse off. And therefore, when help comes, people are already caught very much in poverty. So perhaps some of these conversations that we need to have is that while some of these narratives have served us as a country, as a nation, what are some adjustments? What are some reimagination that we will need in order to be able to really help families like Ron get out of poverty?
Yeah, totally agree with what Wee-Ling said. Very well said. And I think the mentality is that do we bother, and can change start with me? Can change start with you? right? And what we were earlier on sharing was that I think most Singaporeans would say, oh yeah, I know, and there are a lot of poor there, people who are needy, but our government is doing a good job. Our government's providing this, providing that. They help, they can go find help. Or so and so, social workers, the social service agency, they would do their job. But really, they could just be our classmates, they could just be our colleagues, they could just be our neighbors. First thing first, are we mindful in the first place that there are needs? And we may also become the recipient of care and support down the road. We never know. I think, again, building up that caring society, that mentality that starts with me first, is something that do we even bother to really think about and question ourselves? Yeah.
I think incidentally, in this beginning of the year, we actually asked our families if you can, design your own program, initiative to get out of poverty, and what would that look like? And a few of them have said that, a positive relationship with the social worker, not just social worker, but also the organization, because they think that trust takes a long time to build. They can't just tell you the issues, typically you do an intake assessment and then you try to say, what are issues? No, it doesn't happen this way. It happens in an engagement whereby they feel that you really care for them. And another thing is that it's quite interesting. They say that this, initiative must also give them opportunity to not just upgrade themselves, to also opportunity to give back using their talents and skills. They have a lot of talent and skills like sewing. I remember, we need to give a present, to our board member who was stepping down, and we got one of them to, help us do a pouch or something, because you make use of her sewing skills, things like that. And apparently I thought it was just a small thing, and she came to tell us that she felt really proud that she could earn something from her whatever talent that she has, that she can also contribute to our organization, not just that receiving from our organization. Yeah, I think another one that they said was to expand their network so that they can have mutual support, to have more of the expand their ideas of what they can do to help themselves as well. And they also thought that if more corporates will join in, it will encourage them to actually get to move, encourage them in their journey as they address their own issues. Because I think there was once we created a space whereby the corporate donated some money to our families, and what we didn't want to do was very much of a transaction. I mean, it's a very efficient way is to just gyro into their bank account, right? But what we did was created a space for them to get to know the families, and the families got to share their hopes and dreams and aspirations. And then what they got out of it was that, hey, if you ever thought about this, please let us know, and we can help you along in your life journey. Yeah.
And then, Teck Mei, I remember you mentioned last time also about the educational system. Instead of valuing certain capabilities, we should, maybe you like to talk about that too.
I mean, following what was said, right? I mean, giving money is the easiest part. Well, not that we don't need money, so please donate more and more. However, the thing that is really important is to have empathy because you are there. This is why Habitat for Humanity is very hands-on. We send people all over the world. We are in about 70 world countries. We build houses to eliminate slums. And then you ask the question, why you bother to get all these very expensive volunteer, right? I mean, I look at you guys, you are high-ranking people. So if I ask you to give 1 hour of your time to build a house, some people will ask, why don't you ask these people to donate 1 hour of their salary? We can build even more houses. But the point is that you will get involved. You will get hands dirty. You suddenly ask yourself, why am I so privileged compared to all these people, and blah, blah, blah. And you will be prayerfully more enlightened about what you want to do. So that's the angle here. It's not a situation where you just go hire some professional to solve the poverty issue, but we want the society to understand that poverty and all that happens to people who are part of our family, to use a cliche. So the elderly is part of your family. The old, the poor, the disadvantaged, they are all part of this society in which you live in. And so it's not even just about you wanting to live in a better society, but that this is part of our life. And so if we cannot accept that there are people among us who need help and then go and help them, then it's going to be a very poor place we live in. You may be materially very sophisticated, but so what? It is not a country. So the answer is that we really need to accept people who are disadvantaged and try our best to be involved because they are part of who we are as a society.
Thanks for that.
Can I echo that?
Yes, go ahead.
Because early on I didn't share. What I wanted to share also is the value of putting yourself forward and to be that support and not like waiting for someone else to move. Because we are also so full of resources, our whole emotions, our whole being, our whole experience could be that catalyst for change. What I want to share with you is that even among the single parents, we are seeing a lot of single parents themselves coming forward to volunteers as befrienders, journeying with these families who are going down and out, journey with them, and they themselves find the satisfaction. And that kind of energy to want to make change or to build a better future for themselves and the children rubs off to the beneficiaries. And we see how beautiful and priceless that is. And we would hope to have more people like that coming forward.
I resonate a lot with that. I think people who experience poverty, lived experience of poverty, are experts of their own lives. And when they are involved in the solutioning, usually the solutioning is empowering, like you said, but it is also a lot more practical and a lot more feasible because it came from their perspective.
Okay, before I open up the floor to questions taken from all of you, one last question to wrap things up. What kinds of changes do we wish to see in conversations around urban poverty? Say we gather here again in about 2 years' time. What do you hope to see change? What kinds of questions should we be asking then?
I think arising from the conversation we have amongst the four of us, I think one key question we can have a conversation about what makes a good society, recognizing that we are all interconnected, that we can contribute to each other's life. And I just want to echo what Billy and Pauline said, that, let's involve people who have lived experience, who have gone through, challenges, or who are experiencing financial challenges, to come and share with us, share their stories with us. Yeah.
I want to balance the discussion a little bit, right? Because we are international charity, so I get to be involved in international conferences in the discussion of poverty issues and what have you. And I must admit to you that every time I'm in an international gathering, I feel a bit embarrassed talking about our problems. Because their problem is a lot worse than us. They got no water, they have no roof, they have war, they got all my counterparts everywhere. And when it comes to Singapore, our issues are something which people don't understand because we are a city without a slum. That alone is something which a lot of people do not quite get. At the same time, we are privileged to then be able to talk about finer things like love, like empathy, like relationship with one another. And I think it's a good thing. And moving forward, I prayerfully we will be even able to focus on this. Like when the ladies were talking about food security, I was wondering whether is it a pipe dream to say that I can order the food I want rather than you just come and deliver whatever food that you have cooked already for me. So in terms of food security, can you go to that stage of a very fine, dignity-driven kind of idea? So prayerfully, by the time we gather again, we can talk about that kind of a thing. Yeah.
Okay, since you mentioned slums and everything, I see an online question there, and I thought it would be really appropriate now. So one of the questions, online question, is the word slum too narrow and rigid to capture the urban poverty in low-income households? Does it veil inequality in Singapore? How would, yeah.
Because I'm the construction guy, I better answer this. Well, really, in Singapore, we have a very unusual situation where we are the envy of many, many people. So, earlier when we were discussing, I brought up this example. We had this pair of Hong Kong comedians who wanted to launch some Chinese New Year cheesy movie that they always make, right? So every time they do this, they want to be seen to be helping the poor. So they contacted me and said, can we go visit the poor in Singapore? And so, okay, fine. we brought them to a place in Beach Road that we serve all the elderly, and I waited for them at the car park. The two of them appeared, and I walked them towards the house. And the woman asked me in Cantonese, "Why did you bring me to a studio apartment?" And I said, "No, this is not studio apartment. This is where the poor live in Singapore." She looked at me and said, "Come on, don't tell me all this nonsense, because along the way there's all this food reflexology, there's stone thing here, and there's this exercise equipment and what have you." So we have reached that stage hardware-wise where the structure and all that, they are all there. So therefore, by definition, it is not a slum. You want to know what a slum like? Join me when we go to Cambodia and Phnom Penh and go beside the Black River. Then now that's a slum. And this is something you will never forget. And in many of our neighbor country, you have something like that. So it is true to say that this is a slum-free society. Now, we have other urban poverty issues that all the esteemed experts have mentioned. So, but I think it's not, you cannot say that we have a slum in Singapore that is invisible. Yeah.
I think it's precisely the comparison with absolute poverty that reveals that our poverty, the poverty that is experienced in Singapore, is so complex and so hard to talk about, which is why you need more and more conversations to really unpack. It is, while we don't see absolute poverty the way you see in Cambodia and some of these countries, the experience of poverty of people like Ron and many families we work through is equally debilitating. It is not dignifying as well. So this issue is very real, and I thank the best of you for hosting a conversation like this. And there should be more of these conversations. And I think the audience gave a very good question. In discussing poverty, we need to also confront social inequality. This I'm actually quoting from Teo Yu Yan's book. This is what inequality looks like. I think we need to unpack issues related to entrenched privilege. I think earlier on you mentioned that privilege, we don't see it, but other people who don't have privilege really experience it. We want to unpack how come there's this perpetuation of entrenched privilege, and on the flip side, entrenched disadvantage across generation. So I hope we see that in future conversations. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the question and the answers. There's this other question here from the online. Hidden poverty, because we were talking about it, may just be right in our face without us realizing it. So what advice would you give to someone to be better at picking up the hidden struggles that exist around us and steps we can take to make a positive impact? Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah. Silence. They're all processing the question. Actually, ladies, if you like to answer too, we can pass you a mic. Would any of you like to?
Maybe one thing I can contribute is, again, what I'm going to say is do not judge, seek to understand, listen, and to find out what are their needs. It's not just in front of you, but what are their needs. For example, I have a single mother who is struggling with 2 jobs and taking a degree. She's not living in rental place, but she is struggling. And what she needed it's not money. What she needed was someone to coach her in her, in her course, because she's taking a degree course. So we connected her with a lecturer. I think the main thing is what we want to know is knowing their needs and, meet their needs and not just assume what they need. And also another thing that a lot of times people like to give food rations. Yeah. But food rations, okay, it's material, but it may not be very helpful if you are not sensitive to the needs of the family, the health condition of the family. And one of the family members actually told us that in the ideal, initiative that gets people to get out of poverty, these food rations must be given with care and love. You need to know what we're going through before you just shove it into our face. Yeah, so I think that is what I can contribute here.
This brings to my something I just heard recently. During COVID, quite a number of seniors actually jumped. Yeah. And recently another senior that we learned, but that we know of also did that. So sometimes people who need help may not be just people in organization beneficiaries. Sometimes they are your neighbors. Yeah. So my friend who has this neighbor who jumped was very affected because she meet her in the lift all the time. She say hello. She looks okay, you know, but little does she know that this woman was experiencing so much difficulty. And she was thinking of referring other seniors that she would begin to notice in her neighborhood for help. But the question is, what can I do? Not just about organizations doing, what can I do? And she started asking herself the question, and she started asking other neighbors who attended the funeral whether they want to do something to take care of the seniors in their neighborhood. So sometimes the action starts from because I care, because this matter to me, this is my neighborhood. And it can be very small action, but when you organize and come in a group, you know, it starts with that kind of small action that creates the impact for a caring community.
I think, yeah, really is stir your heart, right? Be connected, be relational. Don't shut the doors of your heart. I think you can do a lot of things if you just be, you know, if you're a bit more sensitive, put your antenna up, just be observant on the people around you. And yeah, you care. Just one example, personal example. You know, my kids used to take this bus service to school, to preschool. And lately, even though my kids have already graduated, we still keep in touch. And then recently we found out that the bus driver met with an accident. The uncle who's operating the bus. We know the entire family. And the wife got seriously injured. Very quickly, the whole few of us, you know, alumni, parents, chip in, you know, and raise some funds and give it to the family without them asking for help. You know, but you know, these are little things, right? These are initiatives. You observe something, you notice something, you just want to do something. So go ahead and do it, or ask, how can I help? I think that would make a difference, yeah, in every way.
For me, all my life I've been influenced by American saying I heard when I was very young. It goes something like this. When you are 18 years old, and if you don't think that you want to change the world at 18 years old, you don't want to find a cure for cancer, you don't want to eliminate world poverty, then you have no heart. But when you are 40 years old, you still think you want to change the world, then you have no brains. Now, this saying is a cynical saying. It means that, you know, life will tell you that don't bother with all these things because this problem cannot be solved. The thing is that we need more people without brains. And in a sense, we are preaching to the choir because all you guys, nice people, you come here, you listen to this, right? We do need to continue to strive at it and continue to push at it. Occasions like this, broadcasts, and all of you individuals coming together, everybody must play a part in this. Because if you don't, then it will naturally keep spiraling downwards. And I'm happy to be here because I know that no matter how, it will contribute towards making this place a better society. I think I should run for election, actually. But it's true. It's our house, it's our home, it's our society. And so many different kind of issues out there. And you're the experts and what have you. But at the end of the day, it's the individual showing the care, whether it's your neighbor or some big issue. So please, go out there and make this world a better place.
And finally, we have this question. From non-profit organizations' perspectives, what are the best ways that public agencies, businesses, and universities can advance your mission?
Okay, can I share? I think there's been a lot of buzzwords like 3P, collaborations, collective impact. You know, we've been learning a lot about that, you know, at least for the last decades. Well, I would think that some of these frameworks, like the collective impact framework, is probably proven. I mean, from the overseas that they have tried and tested this framework, and they managed to see some sustainable social change out of it when the various sectors, you know, from public, people, and private coming together, and have dialogues and communications, and they came up with solutioning, and disregard turf guarding, like turf, like this is my area, this is my service boundaries, and disregard corporate agenda. They do see some very tangible change. I think this is a new concept in Singapore. I feel that there's still progress to make for us. I think in Singapore context, we are still very service bounded, like this is my area, there's your area, there's expertise and my expertise. But I think we should have more dialogues, really, without any agenda, to really look at certain key social issues and work on it together. And of course, do it in a structured manner where we will, at the end of the day, reap some outcomes of it. So I thought that it would be a good start for us to have serious dialogues and communications among the three sectors.
Do we have time for questions from the floor? Does anybody have a question? Okay, I think that's it. But if any of your questions haven't been answered, the answers can be found on our Facebook discussion tab, okay? Thank you so much. Thank you for the great questions. Once again, just give them a big warm round of applause. And to you, Tanya and Dalvin. Before I hand over the mic to Zihong, founder of the Best of You social movement, I just want to share a little bit of my key takeaways from listening to all of you. It's been a great learning journey for me, and just to make it short and sweet, I think there's so many things that we can do, and I love it that I can see mindset slowly changing. I mean, I'm having discussions with my older boy and even with him about this whole thing, and the way they look at it is so different from the baggages I carry. I mean, I have to be honest too. Anyway, it boils down to, I think, myself as an individual. If I see a Ron in my midst with a yellow uniform, be it an unwed single parent, a teenager who gives a lot of issues, etc., I need to correct my own biasness and see how to relate and reach out to the person, just be sensitive to that individual within my own space. So with that, enough from me. I'd like to hand over the mic to Zihong. Thank you so much once again.
All right, I guess before I'll just quickly wrap up. I know that we are a little bit behind time. So just a quick wrap up. In 2020, we started a basic income program called Step Up. Janice, not her real name, was the first participant of this program. Now, each month, Janice a single mother of two, received unconditionally a basic income of $1,000. She also knows that she has the Best of You and the Julie's Biscuits team on call should she face any challenge over the 15 months. The program helped her secure part-time work, which led to full-time work. I recount this story because one of the reasons we started this program is that many urban poor, especially single mothers, who have to take on childcare work, had trouble securing part-time work that is flexible enough for childcare, had trouble securing time to also find support from various support organizations. So in other words, she spent a lot of time and energy performing her deservedness to strangers and institutions. At the end of each day, she was exhausted, and the constant worry that she would not have enough food on the table also took a visible toll. As we approach the end of this third installation of Conversations Reimagined, my biggest takeaway in our conversation is this idea of deservedness. Now, before I go on about deservedness, I want to tell you that there are two principles, or there are two perceptions of poverty in Singapore. The first one is that poverty is exceptional. Because Singapore is such a middle-class society, we're well entrenched, the word is entrenched, in middle class. And so anything that falls outside this, it's just not part of it, it's exceptional. If it's exceptional, then I guess it's okay. Then it can be tolerable. But you have to ask this question, do we want to tolerate this? Is this what we want for our community? Now, but my biggest takeaway from today's conversation is this idea of deservedness. Now, it seems in Singapore, some people will and shall always deserve less. Foreign migrant workers can sit in the back of trucks without seat belts, and that's okay, it seems. They can eat poorer quality food as well. The urban poor don't need to have autonomy in the food choices. We can choose for them because they don't deserve it, right? Because they didn't work hard enough, because they would be free riding, because they didn't make enough of the right decisions. Unmarried individuals can own public housing later in life and have fewer choices at those housing opportunities as well. So there are people obviously in our community that deserve less. And this has become, I guess, maybe even institutional logic. Undergirding and reinforcing this fortress of deservedness are various principles, namely, we talked about this, self-reliance. Self-reliance means you are continuously employed and you have family, right? Preferably a heteronormative family to fall back on for support. Now, you're deserving of success and have access to various public goods if you are demonstrated to be self-reliant. You are gainfully employed and have the means to take care of yourselves. But self-reliance isn't self-reliant because there is a lot of other reliance about self-reliance. This ethic of self-reliance is also very pompous because it legitimizes our thinking that if you are successful, then you did it on your own. Oh, I'm not supposed to move the mic, hold on. And if you're not, it's because you didn't do enough for yourself. So, let's blame the victim, right? Much of my self-reliance comes from my opportunity afforded to me by my background, my familial support, my community support, my networks, my gender, and even perhaps my ethnicity, my race. If you're heterosexual and got married in Singapore, it seems that you have a higher level of deservedness. But here comes the paradox. On the one hand, we always say that we aim to be a more compassionate society in Singapore. It's, of course, very catchy to do that, right? On the other, we apply varying degrees of deservedness to different people in our society. But this is where the rubber hits the road. It is very hard to be compassionate if we keep thinking that different people have different level of deservedness. And I don't think this is what we want, because a compassionate society means we all deserve the same dignity. And I say this when we developed the story of Ron and when we worked with Amy and Chandran to bring school performances about urban poverty to schools. One of the most beautiful things is that when you see people in their plight, you really end up not behaving like you think that they deserve less. This is where empathy creates the sparks, right? You come closer. So this is where I think what we can do in our little actions, we've talked about it in Plantitude today already, go closer to the community, because when you're there, this sense of, oh, people deserve less starts to evaporate. I assure you that happens. And we do it with younger children because we know that when they share food, right, maybe the truffle fries that I'm bringing to school, right, well, you deserve it too. There's no questions asked there. Yeah. So how can we, and what can we do to make positive change? I want to end off with this. We all can take actions. At a corporate level, factor in a KPI for your CSR, right? Make doing social good count. Collaborate with the many social organizations that are in our midst today. Reach out to them, talk to them. Seek out opportunities to make change in your community. On a personal level, be kind to your neighbors. Know where the resources are. I think this is one of the things we did with the story of Ron. It ends with a resource hub, because sometimes there's so many resources out there, they just don't know about them. So we need to know about them to deliver them to our community as well. And when Teck Ming said that we're preaching to the choir, we sometimes have to preach to the choir because the choir needs to be coordinated so we can sing a better song, right? So that we're not off pitch here and there. Yeah, so the choir needs to coordinate and get together at the same time. We're running out of time. So I guess take stock of your privileges and reflect on your own mindsets. And if you really don't know what else you can do, fear not. Just make sure you like the Best of You Facebook page and come for the next Conversations Reimagined.
We
Yes.
need more conversations like this. Thank you so much. Thank you for that very meaningful and thoughtful closing, especially, tomorrow's going to be Good Friday. I'd like to say a special thanks to our speakers here and also to Ida and our sign interpreter for making this accessible to our deaf audience. Thank you so much. And thank you all. This is to the viewers online. Thank you so much for spending your time here and have a wonderful and meaningful and fruitful holiday tomorrow.